Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is Joe and Jay Outspoken.
I'm
We
Joe.
are, did you say you're Jay?
No, it's I'm Joe.
Going to be like, man, this was
It
not
says it right there.
this was not a difficult thing for us to, we've been doing this so long, we already forgot our names. So.
I know, right? Who's who? Who is that guy?
Yeah, who dat? So yeah, today we're gonna cover what is Christianity and some of the things that go along with that, stuff that's going on with the rise in Bible sales and the decline in Christianity overall around the world. What's going on? So listen, guys, before we get started, make sure and smash that like button, subscribe to Outspoken. Share the show with everyone you know and hit that bell notification icon to get updates whenever we upload a new episode.
That's right.
Let's get into it. All right, well, welcome back again. Joe, what the heck is going on in the world out there? We've got...
Bro, let me tell you, man, with issues happening in the Middle East, happening in the UK, and just everywhere around the world, things are so unsteady, uncertain in today's society. And of course, you have all these people that suffer anxiety. Not that I'm laughing at them, but, you know,
Right.
If you recall back in our generation, our parents didn't really believe in anxiety, right? It was just a pop in the head, get outside, go play, and get over it. And today it's just so hyperly focused in today's society that everyone, if they're having an issue focusing, you have anxiety. You go, you know, panic attacks and all kinds of things going on. So there's just so much going on. And right now I think it's like a time when I think we've talked about this, where people are looking for answers. We've got to that point, Jay, where we've gone from one extreme to the other. Now, even the left, even the liberal side is even saying like, you know what, enough with the drugs, enough with the doctors. Is there another way to deal with these things? You know, and you know, you have this entire, I guess, second revolution of the Jesus revolution, you know, where you're seeing so many people out there spreading the word of God, and people are jumping on that bandwagon. They're like, you know, what is this? I want to know about it. You know, you mentioned earlier about Bible sales and how they've increased.
Right.
Now, is it because we have new followers? No, in fact, the numbers show that there's been a decrease in Christianity. What are we looking at? Why is there a decrease in Christianity but an increase in Bible sales? I think like any good novel, those non-believers or those that are on the fence, they want to see what's going on. What's the big thing of this Bible that people seek it out to get answers? And
right.
You know, it's funny. I've been on Matthew. I've been studying Matthew and the Gospel of Matthew. There's just so many things that from growing up, I grew up Catholic, right? You grew up Baptist. And so there's so many things that when you're young, bro, you know, you go to church because you're kind of forced to, right? You go to church because you got to go. You know, everyone's going to church. Mom's got her Sunday dress on. You've got to go, right? You know, it was a routine. But, you know, when you're in there, you're sitting in the pew, you're just kind of just like chilling, right? Getting in trouble because your brothers are fighting and you get pinched because you're the one in the middle and have to kind of...
I remember those pinches, bro. Yeah. I remember those.
You're just sitting there like, what did I do?
Man, Grandma she'd use this and get the backside of my arm. Oh
my God.
And twist, man.
Yeah. Well, I used to work out the back of my arm because you know what? I'm like, come at me, Mom. Come at me. But anyway, you know, so we went to church. I wouldn't call myself a Catholic because I didn't really study it. I was just there. I was present, right? Because we had to go. But now that now that I'm reading and I'm looking at all these little things that, you know, you don't catch or that you don't know about. You hear Bible stories throughout your life, but they're just that. They're just stories. But when you read it, you're like, wait a minute. I didn't hear about this detail. You know, I didn't know about this little section. I didn't know that part of the Bible, you know, remember when Jesus went out to the sea and his apostles were out in the ship and it was rocking and rolling and he was supposed to meet them on the other side. And if you read the Bible, it talks about how Jesus was about to pass them by. We never get that story. We always said, oh, he went right to him. No. He was about to pass him by because he told him, hey, I'll meet you on the other side. I got an easy walk, bro. Y'all got to take that ship, you know? And so different. And here's the thing, I think. Here's a caution that I throw out in the wind to people. When you read the Bible, and this is why people say you study the Bible, you don't read the Bible. There are so many things in there that you have to take it into context, everything that's around it. You got this one little phrase, but you have to read what's above it, below it, and then the whole
That's right.
chapter in its content. Like, what are you talking about? Because there are so many, there's parables in there, there's Psalms in there, there's so many things that are relatable, but are in different books. You know what I mean?
That's
And
right.
so you
Yeah.
have to, I always suggest to people, hey, get a study Bible, because you have references where you could go and read and expand on things, and especially
Yeah,
if you're a
that's a
new
good way to
Christian,
do it.
which I did. It's just incredible. So I think people are now looking for answers, but I don't know if you've seen it. It's been out there in social media for a long time. People kind of ignored it, but it's a little thing where it says, if you have anxiety, look at these chapters, read these chapters.
Well, yeah.
If you broke up with someone, you're heartbroken, read these chapters. And I'm like, I never really paid much attention to them until I started reading them. And you're like, oh my God, this makes sense. You know, I mean, there's like so much stuff out there, and people, I think, are starting to relate to that. Now, if that leads
Right.
you into the following of Jesus, a Christian, then great. To me, you have to have a starting point. And I think that's why we're seeing such a negative number in as far as fellowship in Christianity, is because a lot of people are just, I mean, there's so many religions out there. They're so easily, you could get derailed. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
And I think people are at that point where they start reading about Christianity. They like Christianity, but then it takes that one person to go into another church, and before you know it, they're doing other stuff that's not Christian based, or they're reading from
Right.
a book that's been added to the Gospels, which you're not supposed to do, because it tells you in the Bible, do not add or take from my word. And they're doing that. They start straying. And I think that's where we see the negativity. Plus, we're seeing all these, and here's a problem. People associate conservatives into a religion, right? As part of, all you conservatives
Yeah.
are so-and-so, or conservative is just part of it. Or what we are, what we believe that we are, is going to be our religion first. So Christians, Catholics, most Catholics say they're Catholics, but they are Christians. They fall under Catholic. And just people understand that Christianity is just the following of the teachings of Jesus Christ. That's what we call it, Christianity. But then it breaks down into different things like Catholic, Protestant, heathens, and everything else.
Dang it, those heathens.
You see me throw that in there? I think it's important that people understand that go to the Bible, get your answers, read it, but you have to read it. Like, there's parts in there, bro. I'm going to tell you the truth. I ain't going to lie to you. Like in Genesis, when you have the ancestry of everybody, I'm lost, bro. I'm lost.
So and so beget so and so
Yeah,
kind of
and
thing.
begets this and beget that. And I'm like, can we just get to the person who's going to be of importance here? So I think it shows to the reader, this is history. This is historical information. This is something that, someone made up. They have references for people to go back and say, because back then, it was, you were part of the 12 tribes, right? You came from someone. That was your last name, like Jesus of Nazareth came from Nazareth. So it's important to know where everybody came from to kind of understand the Bible. So every section is important. And then there's also books in there that are kind of the same, but they have a little bit more information. Some have more detailed about a certain aspect of that story versus another book, like maybe Matthew, is detailed, whereas maybe John, the Gospel of John, is a little bit not as detailed, but has detailed in other sections. There's just so many that you have to kind of put it together and have meaning. And I think people are now looking for that book for guidance. And I think that's great. I think that's to step in. We need to plant that seed, and then God does the rest. And I think it's a good thing. I mean, if that keeps people preoccupied and their minds focused on something other than bad things, I think that's a win.
We were talking about this a little bit earlier. I'm going to read this snippet from the Wall Street Journal. It says, sales of Bibles are booming, fueled by first-time buyers and new versions. Publishers attribute 22% jump in Bible sales this year to rising anxiety, a search for hope, or highly focused marketing and designs. Now, the one thing I wanted to key in on for the designs is, have you heard of, it is called Monochrome Bible?
No.
And it's actually really cool looking. It is a Bible that is done in all black with white lettering. So they reverse everything.
All right.
And, there's been a lot of studies done on just eyesight and everything like that. And it's actually easier for you to read the white lettering on the black background. And this has made it trendy, kind of cool, for people to get, wow, I have a black Bible with white lettering in it. Doesn't really matter. I heard somebody one time, and they were talking about how people treat their Bibles, and they're like, the Quran is like treated with gloves and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And a little bit like the Torah too. And now those are a little different, because a lot of times some of those, the original ones on ancient scrolls and stuff, they should take care of those. It's like an old Bible, right? That's been around since the 1600s. Yeah, take care of those. It's a historical thing. Having a Bible in pristine condition, was the goal or what have you, then people would never highlight, underline, dog ear the pages, all
Yeah,
those kind of
correct.
things. And the book itself, like the pages it's written on, don't mean anything, man. It's the actual word that comes out of that. If it's, in fact, I remember I used to work in this business where we had catalogs from vendors, right?
Yeah.
Some of the vendors would come through and they'd say, man, I hate it. Every time I come in here, my binders, my books, my catalogs are all tore up and beat up, and there's pages missing, and they're, ripped and all this. And I said, well, would you like to be that vendor over there that nobody ever touches their stuff and it's in pristine condition all the time? So of course not. You want the one that is used and abused because you're making more sales and such. So it's kind of the same thing with a Bible, not that you should go through and tear up the pages and everything.
Right.
However, a worn Bible is a sign that you use it and that you read it, and you're involved with it all the time. So whatever it takes for the new generation to get into this is great. So this new monochrome Bible that's, black with the white writing, it's really cool looking, and you can buy all kinds of different kinds of Bibles. Like you mentioned, like study Bibles. I have those. And then I have my standard Bible that I take to church with me. I know there's some of them that have on the side, kind of like on the spine area, where it has like, if it's Genesis or whatever book of the Bible is. And, if that helps people, that's a great one to do too. Kind of going back on what you were talking about, there's all the different books of the Bible have kind of their place and their, I don't want to use the word genre, but I guess that's kind of what you would say. So like the laws of the Bible are based in like Genesis and Exodus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, Leviticus. Your history,
which is the Old Testament,
which is correct. Historical stuff is in like Acts and Ruth and Judges. Your Gospels, of course, those are the ones that most everybody knows, like
the
Matthew,
New Testament,
Mark, Luke, John, and then of course Revelations. That's where all the Gospels are at. Like the Sermon on the Mount is in Matthew 5, right? So blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, and so on. So you have all of those.
Beatitudes.
The Beatitudes. There you go. We're going through those at church.
I'm learning something.
You better know those because we're going through those in church right now. So yeah, so the different, for lack of a better term, the genres of the Bible, there's a lot of letters in the Bible and a lot of prophecy in the Bible, right? So prophecies in Ezekiel and Isaiah and Malachi and some of those. And then your letters are in like James and Hebrews and Romans and your 1st and 2nd Corinthians and all that. Like you were saying earlier, there's a lot of the portions of the Bible that's over here in this one portion is mirrored in another portion, just in a different way. So you can get a different take on that exact same passage or wording or whatever's coming from the writer is from another writer in a different book that gives you a different perspective on it. Maybe it's easier, more palatable for you to understand. And, now things are getting to where folks are finding exactly what you said. These things like on Instagram and stuff like that, it'll say if you're depressed, go to this, verse of the Bible and read that. The thing that I would say that is so important, and again, we said this in the very beginning, okay, if it says go to, I'm still on the Beatitudes things like Mark 5, 3 or whatever. Well, you need to go from 1 to 6, right? You need to take the whole chapter instead of just the one little verse, go back a little farther and see the context of everything, what's being discussed and everything. Because it's really easy to take it out of context, right? If you take just the one piece out.
There's some great sayings. There's some great verses that people could use in everyday life to kind of encourage them for the day. Some positive verbiage or verses, I should say, that are out there. A lot of these things could be misinterpreted if we're not reading the whole content of that verse that's included, because there's even verses that are out there that are only part of that verse. There's more to it, but people want to use just a little section because that's what sounds good, and the rest of it sounds very complex. And that's the other reason the Bible has been translated in so many versions. There's the Bible, King James, English, New English version, the New King James version, just so many versions out there. Just like everything else, you start losing a little bit of it, of the translation, right? Like some of the importance of that verse that people want to start tattooing on themselves and things like that. But a lot of times these translations are kind of washed down because, when you start looking and reading things, you're like, what does that mean? And you have to kind of start looking into different translations to kind of grasp the meaning behind it. It's so funny because there's so many things. Let me just give you a little example. This is just an example. The story of, what's the guy with the hair? Samson, right?
Samson, that he had his hair cut off later on.
His strength was his hair. Delilah was the woman. That was Samson's downfall, right? Was he loved women. Like, I love women. His strength was in his hair, and blah, blah, blah. Delilah found out that his strength is his hair. So if she would cut his hair, she told these to the Palestinians, that she told them, like, hey, cut his hair. That's his strength. Boom. They cut his hair. Now he lost his strength. What did Samson say? I would just shake him off, because they bound him. They're like, I'll just shake him off and I'm free again because I'm Samson. So people think like, okay, but he didn't. He wasn't able to, right? And they gouged his eyes out and he became a prisoner. So here's the story behind that. Now people are going to read that and say, okay, well, it's a great story. Don't fall for that Jezebel, right? Don't fall for Delilah. Yeah. But the story behind that is very different. And this is where we don't understand. So what is the story behind Samson? The story behind Samson is that we as humans cannot do things on our own. We cannot do it. We can't just shake it off because of how Samson was and, sleeping with all these women and all this stuff. God left him, abandoned him, right? He left him. He's like, you're not listening to me. You're just not doing it. And he thought that he could do it without God, but he was unable to. He wasn't able to. But here's the beauty of it. At the end of this story, it's just a little passage at the end. What does it say? But Samson's hair began to grow. So what's that tell people? Again, people are saying like, well, so dude's hair's growing. What does that tell people? That tells the message that Jesus Christ has been giving us all along since we started reading the new covenant of God, the New Testament, that God loves us and he will not abandon us. So what's that mean? His hair started to grow. That means that there is hope. You disobeyed me. I left you. The moment you come back to me, I'm going to receive you with open arms. But the moral of the story is that we can't do things alone. We need God's help. Like, in other words, we cannot take on sin by itself. If we were able to, this is the thing, bro, this is what fascinates me about the Bible. I get so hyped up about it now because I'm understanding it, where before I'm like, no clue. Here's the beauty of it, though. People think like, oh, I could do. For years I thought, man, I'm not going to be like that person. Let's say my dad. I'm not going to be like my dad. That dude was crazy. I'm not going to do it. I could do it. Those landed on empty ears. You know why? Because I didn't have God supporting me. Because to me, I could do it. I could control these. I could do these things. Nah, I got control. Dude, I was lying to myself. Let me tell you. All right. Because let me tell you this, Jane, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're able to do things on our own, to sin and say, I got this sin, I could control it. With God himself come down, take human form, go through everything he went through, die on the cross, shed his blood for us to wipe our sins so we have a relationship with God. Bro, if he had to do that, that means that we had no strength over our own sins, meaning that we were doomed, bro. Doomed, right? So what makes you think that I have the power to overcome things without God in my life? All that teen cheat came from Samson, bro. You know what I'm saying? So people would read the story and say, oh, that's a great story. Dude needs to protect his hair, put it up in a hair bun. He wouldn't have these issues. You know what I mean? But we all know what God thinks of people with hair buns.
The world's first man bun.
We all know what God thinks of man buns, all right? So don't do it. But you know what I'm saying? Most people would read that story and say, dude, put a man bun on. Boom, protected. Or, dude, screen your chicks better. Delilah is clearly a Jezebel, bro. You should have picked a finer woman. That's not the moral of the story. And I think that's where people fail to read the message. So like you said earlier, it's important. And remember, there's a lot of stories like this in the Bible. Why? Because they last the length of time. Those stories are relatable no matter if it's 3 BC or 2025 AD. I don't even know what year it is. 2025 AD. It doesn't matter where it's at. That story is still relevant. There is relevance to these stories, to everything that we talk about. You know, if you just pay attention to this Sermon on the Mount, which includes the Beatitudes, you have everything you need to be saved, right? To have a godly life, to do good in society. Everything that you need to know about life and how to serve is there. But we fail to read it. We fail to interpret it. Here's the problem with humans, and we do this all the time, not even the biblical version of it. We always read something and we translate it to how it best fits us, to our needs at the moment, whatever it is related to us. One example, we translate things. One example is this, and me and you have joked about this many a times, is as men, we're idiot. We're dumb. And I was doing this, I had a weekend, my oldest birthday, together with the whole family. And I was doing this, and my daughter and my future daughter-in-laws were laughing because they're like, guys, oh my God, guys are ridiculous. So we're on this ship, and we're just waving. I'm waving. I like waving at people, and I'm waving. And girl waves back, and I'm like, yeah, she wants me. They look at me like, oh my God. Like it was funny to me because that's how men think, right? Tell me they don't, because it's a lot. Men be at bars, bro. They be hanging out with their buddies, and a girl smiles and something like, she want me. She hooked on me. You know what I mean? And you're all thinking, bro, get over yourself. You know what I mean? So I think that's the problem, that we as humans have that disconnect where we want answers to things that sometimes we don't have answers to. You know what I mean? Not everything has an answer. Not everything is going to be satisfactory. Life in general is not going to be roses. We get tested every day. I'm sure you get tested every day, right? And it's not because God doubts us. And this is just my hypothesis on this. I don't think God doubts us, but I think that we're tested because it only strengthens our belief in Christianity, and it makes us stronger, right?
Yeah.
Just like in anything in life, bro. When you're tested in life, you have two choices. One, you give up, or two, you keep fighting, keep pushing, getting up and pushing forward, getting up and pushing forward. And I think that when we get tested in faith, it's the same thing. We're going to say, God, wasn't meant to be. It's okay, man. I'm going to keep pushing forward. And, I'm not going to always get a yes from you. Sometimes it's a no, and I'm sure you have your reason. And we don't question it. We move on, right? We go to the next thing, right? We're like little kids. We have to be the right kind of little kids, not the ones that question everything, right? That doesn't work out very much for us. I encourage that, the whole thing with the anxiety and life in general. Now we got this what is the Red Sea? We got a little issues going on over there with Yemen and whatnot's going on. This is important for all of us. People should be praying for the best outcome. I myself, I don't like wars. I really don't. I'd rather not have them, even though we are the most powerful nation in the world. We shouldn't have to resort to that. People say, well, you voted for, some conflicts are not avoidable. You have one of the busiest shipping lanes that's being attacked,
right?
Because they don't agree with Israel. To each their own. And again, I totally believe people believe what you want to believe, favor who you want to favor, side who you want to side. To me, all these words are ridiculous, but at the end of the day,
they are. Any war is ridiculous.
Absolutely. People always question, like, well, why do you favor Israel? There's going on all these things. I go, look, man, I don't agree with a lot of things that the Jews do. They spit on Christians. They're rude to us. They do all kinds of things. But Jerusalem, that's God's holy land. When he comes back, he's coming back there. You know what I mean? And we have to protect that, and it's important. Like all those things, it's really getting old, when people say, well, you're a MAGA guy, and so you voted for that. I didn't. I really didn't vote for wars. I voted against wars. And not everything that MAGA does, I favor. And I'm sure you're the same way. Not everything MAGA does is like, oh yeah, I favor that. I believe what I believe in, and no one's going to take that away from me.
Right.
And that's the power I think, of Christianity, is that you are so based strongly and solely on your Christian belief that no one could really move that.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're really, really new or just a poser, bro. You know what I mean?
Well, we've talked about this at nauseum, the whole January 6th nonsense. And I've said it over and over again. The people that did any kind of damage or quote unquote broke into the
prison,
Capitol, those people may have been MAGA. They may have been Trump supporters, and they may have been Republicans.
They could have been plants too.
And they could have been plants, which I favor of quite a few of them were that. None of them were true conservatives.
No.
Okay.
Or
and
Christians.
This is right. And those people, and there was a few even that were caught on camera that were running over to the Capitol Police or the guards or security, whatever they were, yelling and saying, hey, you guys need to stop this. These people are like breaking windows and doing that kind of stuff. Those would have been more of your conservatives. Those are people that respect law enforcement, weren't going to break in. They weren't going to harm anybody or definitely hurt or steal anything.
They were going to occupy it like Occupy Wall Street happened. Like BLM occupied everything and burned everything, but we weren't burning nothing.
Right.
I agree with you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'd cut you off, but yeah, they were just occupying.
No, so you being a conservative has nothing to do with being a Republican, has nothing to do with being MAGA or a Trump supporter or anything like that. And it all gets cored together. Listen, conservatives are going to go in the most conservative route. And that typically is the Republican Party at this point, right? Because the left side of the aisle is completely different in their belief system. And we've seen how that route has gone, right? And just like you said, most of your riots and stuff that's happening right now, the silliness, people scratching Teslas. The crazy thing is, most of the people that own those Teslas are probably not conservatives, right? Because most of us, we want gas guzzlers, right? We want pickup trucks and such.
It seems like we're winning the war on electric cars now too.
I know they're I mean,
the lefties
here's the
are
funny,
taking care of that for us.
So they're like, they hate what's
Elon.
his name? Elon. We're supposed to be like loving Elon or whatever. I agree with the whole Doge thing. I mean, I think we need to cut all that stuff. And lately they've been bringing up everything about Obama and Biden back in the day, talking about the exact thing. We need to cut spending, and we're spending money on stupid stuff. They're basically doing the same thing now, right? Trying to cut spending and everything. Well, the thing is that you have these people now going out thinking they're getting back at Elon by scratching Teslas. And most of these people are on their side. So when the whole Summer of Love happened and they were burning buildings and looting all these stores, well, those places were
looking at you, Portland.
They're in their own town. And so all of these things are slowly turning people the other direction. So to kind of come full circle, this is what's happening in the belief category, right? People turning to Bibles and why Bible sales are up and why people are looking for something.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what they should be looking for are those Sentry systems that Teslas have, which is the surround camera system that catches you. Maybe they should be looking for that because their dumb-dumbs don't get it.
They don't get it.
They've been catching them. But no, I think you're 100% correct. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with looking for answers because everyone's looked for answers in the conventional way, right? They've always looked to people for answers. They've looked for their leaders. And now they have most of the answers that impact us financially and economically here in worldly lives. They're not fulfilling or answering those spiritual demands that we have as human beings that was implanted to us since our birth. We have this spiritual connectivity with our moms, like that's why we as humans tend to lean more to our mothers than we do our fathers, because we have that connectivity that we had since birth. We know carried us for 9 months. There's a lot of stuff going on there. It's interesting to see, Jay, that there are so many balances, I guess I want to say. I saw this video of this girl and I sent this to my ex-wife, and it was interesting to see. She was talking about the body of Christ and how it was broken, and he gave it up for his children. And she made this beautiful statement how mothers are blessed to have their bodies broken and, have bloodshed to birth a child. And they birth this child, their body gets broken in birthing this child because they love that child, just like Christ gave up his body and was broken because he loved his children. And it just made sense. It's like how God created these things, and there's just so many of these things that you just cannot turn an eye to, like the fact that original sin came from that tree of knowledge, and then Jesus gets crucified on a tree, the crucifix. It's kind of like he has redeemed Adam and Eve for their sins. And that's what it is. There's so many of these things that happen and again, the Bible is written in hundreds of years of separation, right? From when Jesus was crucified.
Right.
But these stories, you look back and they connected. You know what's so funny? That whole science theory about raindrops, evaporation, precipitation, and the little things you learn in high school. Do you know there's a Bible verse in there that explains that? I didn't know that. I found it the other day. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you're saying that that's proof that book is real, right? That it was written so many years ago, but yet science didn't discover that until later on.
Right.
So like, how did that person know that? How did they know that the universe is in space, right? When people thought before it was on something else and it was just in this little pocket. There's just so many things and I think people, if they just start opening their mind, stop getting so building up these little walls like that can't be true. Nah, that's kind of this. No, it's not real. And just open up their minds to what they're reading and how it could impact them, how could it change them. And I think we could look at a better society. And I think we have to do it for our children, man, because we're not living in the same times that you and I were.
Heck no, man. There's a young man that I worked with, and he was asking, I don't even know. Just like you said, you start in Genesis, and I think Genesis is a great place, but you're right. Once you hit like Genesis, what is it, 5, I want to say, is when it starts jumping into
the genealogy,
the genealogy of Adam.
Yeah.
It's really good. But I think probably, this is just my opinion, the best place to start is probably in the Gospels, right?
Yeah.
And Mark would probably be the best book of the Bible that's like ground zero, right? You're going to start there and use that and study Mark, and then like John. Those are two really good books that have a lot of meat of Christianity in them. And then you can get into Acts, which is probably a little tougher book of the Bible to digest, I guess you would say, when you're reading it, but it teaches more about the spread of the gospel, right? And the events that give you the foundation for everything that was going on. And of course, like Genesis and Exodus are very important. Exodus is a really big one because of, everything of Moses bringing the Israelites out of Egypt and all that. So there's obviously Romans, and then you can just start going down from there. But I think for anybody that was like, where would I start?
Well, you know what?
Just to open up the book of Mark and
Mark is
read
good. Yeah.
that.
I like John because that kind of, that's where
John,
that famous verse comes. Like, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It's kind of, that verse alone has so much force behind it. Like, I think, wait a minute, did I just read what I read? These are the things of the Bible that you have to catch these things. You're like,
right.
Because then later on in the Bible, you hear about the Word of God.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute, the Word of God, that was, my God, he's talking about Jesus. You know what I mean?
Well, what was it? Stone Cold Steve Austin with he had John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his one and only son.
His only
whoever
begotten
believes
son
in him shall not perish but have eternal life.
So John is a good book to start as well.
Yeah. That's probably the most famous saying in the Bible. And it's one of those
John
things as a Christian, John 3:16. As a Christian, that eventually you have to have, like, your off the top of your head, hey man, what's your favorite verse in the Bible? And I think the one that always hit me hard, and it was, if people know, they know, and it's Isaiah 53:5. And it didn't dawn on me till later on what that really meant. And it talks about Jesus obtaining his stripes, from being whipped, right? And it hits me every time that we take the sacraments, at church. And man, as a little kid, obviously you're getting grape juice and a cracker, and you just do it, and it doesn't really have any effect on you. Brother, it gets me really emotional to think of the true human context, like what actually happened at Golgotha that day, the horrific things that he went through. And I can't remember who it was, if it was Harvard or one of these big schools, and they did an actual medical documentation of what would have happened and how his back, you would have actually seen his rib, the back portion of his rib cage would have been exposed. You would have seen his spinal column, that his flesh was ripped from him, right?
Yeah, that's
it
crazy.
says in the Bible
carry
that
the cross,
and then carry the cross on your back, right? Splintered and everything else.
And then the robe that was stuck on. Oh man, I just can't.
Yeah, it's horrific. That it says in the Bible that you would not be able to distinguish him to be a man or woman. They ripped him apart. And just the horrificness of even knowing that. And when you close your eyes and you pray, what he went through and how that was all for us, because we are unforgivable, right? We are so sinful and everything. Again, kind of to recap on, going back through the different parts of the Bible, if you go back to Genesis, and I think we've said this before, and I've said this so many times to people that I've talked to, if you think about it, the first man and woman had everything. They got to walk hand in hand with God, speak to him, and have conversation with him on a daily basis. They were given everything. You can have everything. You're going to live forever. There is no sickness. Everything was perfect. The only thing you were asked is to not take the fruit from the tree of life. And
every woman
never satisfied, man.
Satisfied. Always
I want more. Yeah, it's great, but how about a little bit more?
I like the ring, 0.5 carats. I like it, but a carrot would be nice.
Carrot would be nice, yeah.
Carol has a carrot, and she's not even that pretty. You know what I mean?
Wow.
But I'm just saying. Dang,
Carol.
Women, I love you, but you know what? It's funny. One of my favorite verses is kind of one of my saddest verses that I like is Romans 7:15. And basically what Romans 7:15 is where you don't understand your actions. Like, you don't want to sin, but you find yourself sinning. You hate that you're doing it. It basically tells you, look, buddy, you're human. You're going to do things that you don't want to do, and you're going to keep doing them because as much as you hate them, you just do them. And that just goes to prove that we alone, we're nothing. We can't function alone. We're like, you could say, I don't need you, God. I got this. and your life could be good. It could be good. Hear me
Right.
out. It could be good, right?
Well, it's Paul has his like self discovery, right? Like we all do. That man, I can't get this on my own. I told this last Sunday. I told the pastor, we were kind of talking for a second,
Yeah.
and I said,
About me for not going, huh? I know.
yeah.
Judgmental.
Judging Joe. That's this episode, our newest episode, Judging Joe.
Yeah.
I was telling him, I said, the real struggle that you have every day. I said, here's a great example. Like I'm going through my Instagram feed, right? And I have a lot of stuff now because you change your feed, right? Based on what you click on. And you and I talked about this. And I told this to the pastor. I said, I'm going through and there's whatever. I follow a bunch of churches and like Hillsong and Elevation Worship and all these different things. And I'm scrolling through there. Here comes like some kind of thing, it's sponsored or whatever thing. And it's some girl running down a beach in a bikini. And what do? I click on it. And the second I click on it, and I told the pastor this, I said, the second I click on it, I go, what did I do that for? Because now your
algorithm changes.
My stupid algorithm is going to have a bunch
then you get a bunch of big booty hoes and big old
exactly.
chi-chis flopping.
Or all these advertisements for Shine clothing, from all these influencers that sell Shine clothing or Sheen or whatever it's called.
I literally had to go through my mind too, bro. And I had to put like not interested, get rid of like, and so all that's left is, I know it's a weird combination, don't judge me, please, Jesus, is Bible quotes, Bible stuff, and guns.
Right? Yeah. I was going to say, see, in mine, I got a lot of drums in there and then RVing and stuff like that.
I know you have a lot of cat stuff in there too.
There are no cats in there, buddy. I'll have bikinis before cats, man.
That's another one I have, a bunch of coffee stuff. So
yeah. I got coffee stuff too,
it's the weirdest combination.
Yeah.
Bible, guns, and coffee, baby. You know what I mean? It's just like, all right, this guy belongs in the South. You know what I mean?
I don't see a problem. I don't see a problem. I don't hear a problem there at all.
Yeah. I've stopped drinking so much, and I like, not so much. I make it sound like I'm an alcoholic. There's things happening, bro. You know what I mean? Like I had a beer the day. I've had these beers in my fridge forever. I went to crack one open the other day. I took 2 sips. I'm like, this is disgusting. And I tossed it. I'm like, I'm not like in it anymore. Like it's like, you know what I mean? I don't know. More important things.
I think your palate changes with your personality type too, right? Because you and I have talked about the whole thing with drinking when you're young. Beer, you find it disgusting, and then as it becomes a thing with friends, then it's kind of cool to drink beer, right? And it's almost a challenge to find that it tastes good. As your palate changes over time, like certain mixed drinks, and of course, like I know you don't like wine, but that's one of the things that because of the job I was at and a couple of the people that
you bougie,
got gifts,
you're bougie, bro.
You're bougie. And you hang out with people that are bougie. I don't want to say fully wine connoisseurs, but they like it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, bougie. You and I enjoy our mixed drinks. So, you like your, I always forget what it's called.
Old fashioned martini.
Yeah. And, I like my rum and Cokes and things like that. So
with extra cherries.
I like them. All right. I used to love Shirley Temples. Don't blame me. That's where my mixed drinks obsession began. It's a good thing. I hope more people start reading the Bible, even if it's leisurely to begin. And I'm sure the more they read, the more they get intrigued, the more they'll have understanding, and the more they will fall in love with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So get out there and get a book, preferably the Bible, and start reading, man. You'll be amazed at how your life changes for the better.
It will change your soul, whether or not you believe you have one or not. It'll
probably make you cry first. It'll probably make you cry first, just to know that someone out there loves you as much as they do. And it's a love that we as humans could only pray that we learn to love that way. And this world would be so much different. Get out there, buy a Bible, read the Bible, get involved, make a difference, make a difference with yourself. Start with you and then work outward. So I think that'll be great. So it was a fun topic, buddy. I'm glad we jumped into that one.
Yep. It's really, really good. And you guys leave comments down below if you have a favorite Bible verse or something like that. And if you haven't got into it, leave questions down. Let's open a topic up and start having questions and stuff like that. And there's folks that I do know watch the show that can actually answer back pretty well. And we can try to answer back on it too. And if you disagree with us, hey, leave a comment about that too. We'd love to, hear your take on things. But
absolutely.
Hey, before we get out of here, make sure and smash that like button, subscribe to Outspoken, share the show with everyone you know, and hit that bell notification icon to get updated whenever we upload a new episode. All right, everybody, make sure you take care of one another.
Remember, do better, be better.
And as always,
God,
God bless America.
We'll see you again, guys. See you next week.
See you next Tuesday.